decisions were beginning to be formulated about how these specific protocols relating to the Hague Convention would be formulated.
We made it, we prepared it for discussion in a low-level area or in a low-level situation in the armed forces. Because at that moment, I worked or my command was the territorial command of a federal province. Mm-hmm. This is not very high. This is, let me say, level of a division. Mm-hmm. And there are a number of steps up to the ministry, mm-hmm. I would say. And in that situation, we started to ask questions. How does that work on the legal basis? Mm-hmm. How does that work, and how is this going on? And even we asked about responsibilities. Who is responsible for what and for what decision? And in that, when I found that I would say the responsibility was on very weak shoulders, so I tried to make a report about that and to give it to the ministry. And in the beginning, there was no big interest about such a report. And then I said to my commanders, and this was something I would say very personally of mine, I thought by myself that I don't like to take the responsibility for things we have, for example, in my area of where I was in the federal province, we have 12 very big monasteries. And so I thought if something will happen in a military crisis or in a defense situation, my commanders always can say, yes, we had a special advisor, he never told us. And so I decided also for my security, I would say, to give an exact report of the situation. And then I did it, I wrote, I made let me say, a little study, a behavioristic study, but I had the big luck that my direct commander, who was responsible for operative activities in the region, I should mention his name. It is now Brigadier General Jocham. I think he has world merits because he was the first I know who gave a special order to somebody like me, a cultural property protection officer, to work out the framework of a military action or a real defense situation in a bigger area or in a country.
So let me ask you a question then, because we're already on an interesting topic. So let's begin here with what we're already talking about. This morning, when you and I were speaking informally, you said to me that UNESCO had become very interested and very involved with you and with the Austrian military because, in a certain sense, the Austrian military served as a great example for how one could begin to structure these protocols for dealing with cultural property in the event of armed warfare. So the first question that I'd like to ask you is that obviously at one point, the Hague Convention was 1954, and then there are two later protocols from the 70s and then from the 90s. At what point did Austria begin to really seriously contemplate the types of issues that you've just been talking about? In other words, when did they start to begin to define the types of protocols that who would make certain types of decisions in a military action about protection and when protection could be overridden? So the command level decisions.
On the military side, we started in the beginning of the 70s. We signed the convention 64, then there was a little vacuum, I would say, but with the marching in of the Warsaw Pact in 68 in our neighbor country, in the former Czechoslovakia, this was the kick-off, I would say. And then in the armed forces, they started beginning of the 70s. There is a famous colleague, already retired, Brigadier General Schlaus. He was the first man. He was a single fighter for many years, and he was chief of our ABC school. That means this is nuclear, biological and chemical weapon defense school. And he started for the first time with training seminars for cultural property protection officers. And then
what was his particular interest? What do you think motivated him?
He was officer, I think second lieutenant in World War II, and he saw in that area the destructions which happened. And then he has in his family some relationship to a famous man whose name is Lieutenant Colonel Schlegel. He saved Monte Cassino.
What is Monte Cassino?
In Italy,
yeah.
When the U.S. forces came from Africa, and under General Clark, 44 and 45, they moved from Africa and landed in near Naples and went up north of Italy. And Monte Cassino is one of the biggest monasteries in old Europe, and the oldest one. Monte Cassino was founded, this is Mother Monastery of the Benedictines Order, and was founded 529.
So there were historical reasons in his family,
yes,
and cultural reasons why he became
had some
interested.
relationship there, and this famous Lieutenant Colonel Schlegel organized the safeguarding of the cultural property of Monte Cassino, and this was transported from Monte Cassino to the Vatican. So most of the pictures and historical documents were saved, whereas the monastery itself was completely destroyed.
I'm curious, is there anything in your own personal history that made you become interested in this particular field?
For myself?
Yeah. What was your motivation?
I always had I usually studied, I have a double study. I studied business administration and worked on the business side, but I have a second study. I studied history and history of art. And so I came there more or less I was interested in the subject, but this was strongly covered by some other people when I did my service and my reserve services. And I had a very good commander in that sense, and he said, I'm usually come from the economic department I am so-called intendance officer. That means the economic, and my chief in that time told me, he said, I have a number of such lawyers and businessmen like you, but somebody with this special combination that studying history too and history of art, this is unique and you should go there, you are much better there. And I'm grateful to him because I'm working with the army up to now, and the others are long time retired, or have been retired. And so I came there, and as I told you, I started with only I felt that I have some obligations to work and to start seriously with that work. And the only thing what it made successful was that we began to ask very simple question about what I told. Who is responsible, and how is the framework within we can make decisions? And it came very soon, it came clear, and it came up that there was no special regulations for that. And the higher we came in asking, even on the international level, it came up that there was no definition about.
So you were basically just asking a set of logical questions about the types of decisions that are made in battlefield conditions.
You know, it is to work with the convention is normally very easy, because if you if a country signs the convention and ratifies it, then it has to be transferred into national law. And in that moment, if it is national law, you have the responsibility for that. So it was very easy. I contacted my commanders and my colleagues and said, so we have that law, and we have to go alongside that. How are we doing that?
Mm-hmm.
How is the situation? What are you doing that?
And of course, you were also present at the signing of the second protocol of the Hague Convention, right?
Yes. Finally, when after this, the people more and more were going to know me, so that at the end they sent me also as a delegate to different conferences, to Paris, to UNESCO, and giving my contribution at the end. They denominated me in the Austrian delegation for the conference for the second protocol in The Hague in 1999. So I was a member, and I would say I'm very proud that I was originally participating in that conference and giving my contributions to what we have now as a new regime in that field.
It must have been an extraordinary experience. Do you remember a feeling of excitement at the signing of this protocol? What was the
For
feeling
me,
among the delegates? The atmosphere of.
This is true in two senses, because at the same time in the building where the conference took place, on just opposite side, the Hague Tribunal worked at the same time. So several of us went over to see what's going on in this situation. And this was really applied law. So what we are creating new, on the other side, this was applied law. We could see more or less face to face. And there is another colleague I would like to mention him. This is Dr. Thomas Desch. He is in our law department, international law department in the Ministry of Defense. He is a very well-known lawyer and legal advisor, and he was managing a working group in The Hague. So I think we give a good contribution from the Austrian side to the development of the second protocol.
What is really the importance of the second protocol? I mean, you were there during the construction of it and the signing of it. What do you feel were the most important things that the second protocol clarified?
I would say the second protocol is more a clarifying and giving detailed definitions how the convention should be applied. For example, we have, as I can refer, in chapter 2, we have Article 5, the safeguarding. So it is exactly mentioned that the states or the partners to the convention or which ratify, it is more detailed what they should do or what they have to do. And I would say our main motto is cultural property protection is a task to be done in times of peace and in times of peace. If you do it in times of crisis, it is too late. And this was one of the real stressed mottos in that chapter 2. Article 5 is referring to safeguarding of cultural property, and there is also written that the state should denominate the authorities which are responsible for that. They should give the responsibility to some people or to some authorities, that nobody can say afterwards, we don't know, or we are not responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one.
Mm-hmm. Do you need some water?
No, thank you.
Are we still rolling?
Mm-hmm.
I think you gave me what I thought was a wonderful example the other day when we were speaking informally, and I was hoping that you had it with you today, which was this cardboard printed sign, the blue shield, and the story behind how these were printed up and why
Yeah.
they were done on paper. Can you show us
Yeah.
that and just tell us the story?
Somebody told me, I'm not sure if it is real, if it happened really as it was reported. The colleague who told me died already, so I cannot mention him. He was a colleague from the from the monument department.
So this is a historical document.
This is
you
a
know.
very historical document because if the story is not true, then it is very good invented. He told me that at that time lower level Austrian diplomats met Russian diplomats on a reception in Switzerland, and this was in spring 1968. And this was the time when this was the in which the liberation of Czechoslovakia took place under Alexander Dubček.
The Prague Spring.
Yes, and but on the other side, we heard that something is in move in the area of the Warsaw Pact on the military side. I think also our intelligence services they recognized that something is going on there. But nevertheless, these Austrian diplomats, when they spoke with the Russians, it was told me that the Russians asked what's going on with the Hague Convention in Austria, and if the signs are put already on houses or on objects. And the Austrians coming home and reporting that to the ministry, and combining that information they had from intelligence services and from that asking, they thought this was so a specified asking, so that they were really alarmed because at that moment we had nothing for that. So, and they started to, in fact, that they didn't have time to create other shields and other signs. They started to create that on a cartoon, on a paper. So, and this is one of those historical documents from 1968.
What are the languages on that?
This is the languages. It is written Kulturdenkmal. That means cultural property, and this is in German, in English, in French, and in Russian.
So in Russian because of the Warsaw
Yeah,
Pact movement.
because we were in the middle of the let me say of the front.
So you didn't know, you thought maybe tanks would roll over the border. You
Yeah,
had no
this
idea.
was the. We were in fear that Austrian territory could be touched in that sense, even in the eastern part, near the Vienna region, and so they started immediately to produce these symbols and to send it to the object holders.
But
Can you hold up that? I'm going to just get it closer.
hold it straight in
Yeah.
front of the camera.
It is written, protected by the Convention of The Hague, dated 14th of May 54, for the protection of cultural property in the event of armed conflict. This is the English text. And from cultural property in the 4 languages.
Actually, just hold it the way you were holding it before, when you were talking about it.
Yeah?
Yeah,
like
just
that.
back there. Yeah, just like that. Perfect. Alright.
You see it?
Yeah,
You
no.
can read it?
Tilt it to that. Perfect, perfect, perfect.
This is the original size. We have it also now in metal, enabled with
Enamel.
enameled, yeah. Very expensive,
Yeah.
But permanent.
but permanent, yeah. We are going to choose this now and to change it.
Oh, really?
Not to change it, not to choose, to change it, because we will have a problem, because many people, they are accustomed to that, and they have it on their houses.
Yeah.
But in fact, that we will reduce the objects in the future.
Mm-hmm.
We reduce, not refuse. We will reduce the number.
The number of entries.
And a number of people will lose the protection, and they will be not very happy about that. So that we think that we should create another size or another kind of
We have about.
information for the common soldiers.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question that I would like to ask you. You've obviously devoted a great portion of your working life to thinking out these issues of how to implement the Hague Convention, and a lot of these have basically come out of logical inquiry and thinking about matters of cultural heritage and cultural patrimony and what this means to us as human beings. Given the recent crisis in Iraq and the type of systemic looting that has gone on of the museums, of the libraries, of all of these types of things, is this something that strikes you as unusual? I mean, would you think that a huge institution like the Pentagon would have people thinking similarly to yourself? And I want to add to that, you know, they did, before you spoke about Monte Cassino, America did have this experience in the Second World War where they had to deal with cultural patrimony. So what do you think happened? Is this an anomaly? Why did it happen? Were they not thinking about it? And obviously this is speculation.
First of all, the United States haven't signed the conventions. This is they have a clear argument why they must not take care about that. This is the one. And you know, military leaders are always, they are going strictly, what is order? That is order, and that will be done. If this is, I had some discussions with colleagues from the Pentagon, and if when I asked them, they said, we are still ready, but this is also a political question. If they don't get the regulations for that, they will not do. Military people are strictly trained to go alongside order and regulations. This is the one. The second is, it is a long procedure to convince people in the armed forces about the necessity. This is not a procedure you find maybe a number of people and mostly high-ranking officers. They have responsibility in that case, and feel. But on the other side, it is a long procedure to. And what happened, for example, also in Iraq as well, when the NATO entered into Kosovo, it was the same. The preparatory measures should be that, and the most dangerous situation is the vacuum between when the defending troops withdraw and the let me say, the attacking troops go in the area. So there is a vacuum, even in that time, when till an administration is created new. And mostly this is the biggest time of insecurity, and I think that this is one of the reasons that happens in Iraq. So this looting and destruction. So the military leaders didn't take care about that. I could say this is mainly the responsibility of higher level commands, because they should give the order. A normal soldier, why should he is not allowed to do. He get, even in a war situation, he has his order. That means he goes to that door and there he stops, or he protects it, or he doesn't protect it. But if he hasn't an order, he will not do that. So this is a question of higher level commands to think about that. This is the main thing. And on the other hand is, but higher level command wouldn't do it if they haven't regulations about that.
You bring up an interesting point, because before, when we were speaking with Dr. Mulder-Karpe, he had mentioned the idea that if they had simply had a curfew in Baghdad for 5 days, where nobody could go out onto the street,
Yeah.
the looting would not have occurred. And you've
Yeah.
just spoken about the idea of a vacuum
Yeah.
being the greatest time of insecurity
Yeah.
for cultural patrimony.
Yeah.
Would you agree with what Dr. Muller-Karpa had to say, that there might have been some way to deal with this period of a vacuum of insecurity?
Yes, but the main problem is that people who want to destroy or who want to loot, they don't take care mostly about. They do it secret. For example, what happened in the NATO was accused about that they didn't care in Kosovo. It was the same situation. During the time when the Serbs had withdrawn and the NATO troops came in, the mostly Kosovarian troops or Chekao, I don't know who, they put demolition charges on churches and they bombed it. The biggest destruction happened when the Allied troops, after the Allied troops took over the territory. So, and I think this is the one. And the second is, if they are in, then it is in the responsibility of the commanding officer to take care about that.
Do you think that
Because he's the only one power in the area.
do you think that because of Austria's geographical position and its history, it has a very specific type of relationship to cultural property? I mean, I give you an example. When I was a very young student,
Yeah.
the first year that I was a student, my professor, my mentor, was an
Yeah.
Austrian professor. Her name was
Yeah.
Edith Prada.
Yeah.
And I came to Austria to study Germany,
Yeah.
to study German. And after I had studied German for a month, I went and I spent 3 weeks with her in Hagengut. And the following year, she said to me, I hope that you can come back and stay with me in Hagengut again.
Yeah.
But of course, we never know what will happen. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, because of what's happening in Yugoslavia. And I said, are you thinking of World War I and that this could be repeated? And she said, well, yes, these things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question I'm asking is, because Austria occupies this precarious geographical position in Europe, where its history in World War I and World War II, it's constantly been touched by conflicts that have broken out on the borders. Do you think it
Yeah.
has a special sensitivity?
But in the cultural sensitivity or sensibility, this is something what is, let me say, in. We, for example, in Austria, in the internal policy, we fight about everything, but never we fight about the budget of the opera house in Vienna. And even the Vorarlberg people who live 800 kilometers away, and they never, or very, very rare, have the possibility to come to a performance, they give their contribution and they never speak about that. So we spend, this is for this country is by historic development always had a big heart for cultural links and
Well, in a sense, you're making an interesting point, because here you have people who never go to the opera, yet they realize that this culturally is so important that if the opera were not to exist,
this is a feeling of identity.
they would lose their identity. So,
Yeah.
in times of war, when this property is destroyed,
Yeah.
would you say that people lose their identity? That that's really what this is about?
Yeah, but one of the first activities after war was to rebuild the opera house. So all the efforts were given to rebuild it, and the same sense is to. So, in fact, I had to convince, let me say, my commanders, or sometimes you find, but generally in the high level. The high level officers I would say in the Austrian armed forces, all of them they go to concerts, they go to theater, and even if they live in Vienna. This is part of normal life here. So it is not to feel a responsibility for that. This was, and we said maybe we are not able to contribute. Let me say in the world a big tank battalion or whatever, but maybe we could give a contribution in that field, or in high technology. This is better in.
Well, I think
in
you have
United
given a
States.
contribution in this
Pardon?
field. I think you have given a contribution in this field.
Yeah,
If you hadn't, UNESCO wouldn't want to use you as an example.
yeah, that's true. But we are very proud that they elected us to give our contribution in that field.
Did you have any resistance? Why don't you go?
I'm
and
going to
I'll-
have to
yeah.
go. She's going to continue the
Okay,
interview,
okay,
if that's okay.
okay.
Yeah, why don't we put the camera on because
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
no, I
So,
think it's.
but
it's like,
you give the questions.
how did you did you get any resistance when you were trying to bring this forth? Was it difficult to try to convince people in the military?
I would say in the beginning it was a little bit difficult because a number of commanders had to take care about that. They were not trained to think in that field, so they made their military plans of operation, and they were not accustomed to take care about that. This was the one, so that a number of them was not really very happy with them. And in a country like ours, which such a density, and as I showed you, the big number we had in that time, it made the life for a military leader really difficult. So that he always was thinking with that he is with one leg in prison, more or less, if he is strictly obeying the rules of the convention. And so when the discussion started in a serious way, some of the higher leaders were more or less grateful because they said now it is theme. Now we discuss on a good level about that, and there should be a solution. And this was, I think, that we gave at that time, middle of the 90s, also a good incentive to UNESCO for that what happened or what ended in the second protocol, because there were a number of conferences and discussions before in the assembly of the member states of the Hague Convention in Paris, and maybe this and I think our merits in that time was that up to that time mostly the discussion in Paris at the UNESCO took place or was led by diplomats, and we brought in the military part. That means we asked our ministry to send also in the delegation to Paris military people, and so the discussion in Paris changed a little bit. The Italians followed very soon, and I remember there was once a very let me say hot discussion about the problems which occur. You can imagine what happens in Italy, a country, let me say, they have, as they say, 70% of cultural property of Europe. So I don't know how the Italians will manage that really compared with. This is also an interesting discussion about what is should be under protection and what is cultural property, because in a country like in Italy or in Austria, maybe it is different. Like in a huge area in I would not say, but in the Sahara, for example. So where you have on one point and then some kilometers nothing and then the next. But here you have on every step.
Why do you think it's important to have military representation at a meeting like this UNESCO convention?
In the discussion about because it is a military convention. It is called the Hague Convention in the event of armed conflict. So the military is directly concerned, and it refers directly to that what they are doing. So and nobody listened about the arguments they have. This is not my experience is that a number of military leaders, or most of them, they are very open to work with the convention. They want to do that, but on the other hand, they have their orders and their regulations what to do, and they are accustomed and trained to go alongside the orders and the regulations. So this is what I said. We had many years where in the rules of engagement in international peacekeeping operations, the protection of cultural property never was mentioned. But on the other hand, recently, for example, to the European Union, the inquiry of Macedonia had on first position protection of people and human life, and on second point was protection of cultural property. So as they reported me, they were really surprised about that.
What about the issue of, as you said, being out there in the field? You're faced with these decisions. You're a low-level, soldier or troop, in the situation where, do these laws and the respect for cultural property trickle down?
What we intend to do is that the normal soldier should have an idea about cultural property protection, and he should be trained that nobody could expect that he is a specialist for those things. How to handle that, how to move that, or they should be trained to recognize that he is just meeting a cultural property on the one hand, and on the other hand, he should have regulations how to handle that. That means he should report to his commander and maybe in the first time to secure it, to protect it and against looting or against pillaging or whatever. So that and waiting, making a report to his commanders and waiting what happens. And also his commanders, they are not cultural property protection people or persons who are experienced in that. But there should be some specialist with them, or they should have the knowledge what to do with that, or how do we handle that. And this is something what should be taken care in the future in also in these military orders and regulations. This is very easy, I think. This is you have the special let me say directive for logistics and for for communication and forever. So you make a special in the general order a special directive or a special point regulations or directives for cultural property. If you meet one, or it's very easy.
Did this happen in Kosovo, or did you see this working? Did it?
This is just what we are speaking about that, but it didn't happen. When our troops went to Kosovo, the first what we asked our commanding officers is, what is going on with cultural property? They said, we have no special order in the rules of engagement. So, but the rules of engagement are given by the international community or by the NATO or whatever. So what we are doing is, or what we intend to do is, to, in such elite bodies, like a number of states meet together, and they have all of them have different laws and different internal regulations. And even if you have, like the United States, they haven't signed any convention.
So you say in Kosovo it didn't happen, but how?
It's more and more going on. Now they are more and more, they are aware of that more and more, but in the beginning they thought they have only to protect people and that's it. But
And did NATO, is it a matter of getting NATO to adopt these regulations?
it is a matter that they should adopt it, but NATO is a difficult body. You know, they never give answer. If you can ask them something, but you never will get an answer. So for us it is quite more difficult because we are not partner to NATO. So what should we do? We are a partner in NATO Partnership for Peace program, but this is very outside of real activities.
Mm.
So what we hope is that we are in very good and close contact with NATO partners here from our neighbor countries. So if we can find some cooperation with them and they can make it to a topic or to a theme within the discussion there, because they have vote and they have their special rights in the community, but for Austria we are out of that. But nevertheless, I am convinced that there is a number of people also in NATO who this is only a question of one incentive moment or in activity. I always say to colleagues, do that job and you will be the first and you will be famous for that. Isn't it? I think so.
I wonder if you could expand a little bit about, you discussed how, sort of a respect for culture is sort of ingrained in Austrian psyche in a certain sense.
Yeah.
Do you think that is required, or how do you teach somebody that? For Americans, I don't think that's necessarily true.
To have responsibility for cultural property also. I think in Europe this is not a question. The people have a natural feeling for that, I would say. Because if you for example, if you go to Prague or to Hungary, or speaking from our neighbor countries, or even if you go to Portugal, if you have the people meet on every step. They have some new adventure, or they know that, and this is something what's going on in the daily life. About if you hear news in European countries, you have also in the main evening news there is also a part of about what's going on in culture. So the special what is reported. So the people, this is something what is in their daily. And there is the difference, ethnical or high music or whatever. So, and I think this is not in what we have today is that we have this global situation, and that we meet in different areas of culture, and we go there and to create this feeling. This is a new challenge, I would say, and to have respect also to other cultures, much more than we have, and this is also a question of permanent learning and education.
How do you do that? How do you educate young people about that?
I would say, I told you that there exists also the second protocol refers explicitly to NGOs, to non-governmental organizations, who should help to spread and to promote the ideas of the convention. As I told you, in Austria we have several of those organizations. One of them is, as I already mentioned, the Austrian Society for the Protection of Cultural Property, which is a non-governmental organization with good relationship or cooperation to the armed forces. And one of the main goals of the society is also to promote the ideas of the Hague Convention in the public, in the civil public sector, as well as in the armed forces. And the number of I said a number of cultural property protection officers, and the society was founded by Brigadier Schlaus, who was the first man in the Austrian armed forces who dealt in that field. And I think this is an important issue that people be aware of that and try to spread the ideas and to demand what is necessary to do in the public. And the society, for example, there is also in good cooperation with the Ministry of Education. Sometimes we, or I say we because I am also a member of this society, and they organize information days in schools. Invite one of our colleagues in uniform that to bring the ideas. And in the army, on the other side, it is, for example, the year 1996. This was also a special year for Austria. It was the 1000th anniversary of the first, when the name Austria was first mentioned. So our Minister of Defense declared the year to the year of cultural property protection. And an order was given that all over the country the soldiers have to be trained in and informed about the content and the ideas of the Hague Convention and the responsibility against cultural property. So
That's great.
this is a question of organizing a trainings program. more or less.
So if you were to, give advice to a country which doesn't have these relationships and doesn't have a history of or sensibility.
I think
Like-
every country has that, and because all people who live in an area or in a country, they feel proud of this is their homeland. So they have some relationships to what they want to, what is worthy to them, or where they find their origins and their identity. So this is not so. It is maybe more a question of social conscience, but I think you will. I don't know any country who has not cultural. I would say you find that in every nation and in every country.
But how do you transfer that sensibility into the military who, maybe are, as you say, trained to...
Yeah, you have two possibilities. The one is that it is a natural feeling of the people that there is a necessity. The other one is you do it by normal administrative and legal way. That means if a country signs, as I mentioned, the convention and is going to adopt it, then it has to be the regulation has to be transferred in international law, and from that moment there is a clear obligation what to do, so that you can. I think every simple civilian of the country can make these questions. You can, I think you can also give this question first to the politicians in the United States. Why don't you sign the convention? And second, if they have done it, the question to the authorities concerned, the Minister of Defense, Minister of Culture, or Department of Culture, what have you done? Because it is clearly written that, for example, the responsible authorities should be denominated on the one hand, and what activities of safeguarding, of precautionary measures did you take already? What did you do? And this is the same. How is the education program and the information level in the armed forces? How are the structures? This could be to a journalist, a normal. This is the same what we did, and it works very well. You have to find the responsible people, and to make them aware of their responsibility. And there's a good advantage in the second protocol is the chapter 3 or 4, the possibility of the new regime of prosecution and criminal responsibility and jurisdiction. It is very clear, so that the people have to know if they are doing wrong, then they have to be aware that they will be brought to court.
Yeah, I have one last, and pretend we didn't do the interview yesterday,
Yeah.
just in case we want to use this version instead.
Yeah.
So don't say, as I mentioned yesterday, because we might not use
Yeah.
it.
Excuse me.
That's okay.
Yeah. Cut it.
Yeah, exactly. Can you just describe your role during the Iraq War at all? Did you? What was your role during the?
My role.
Yeah.
We have
nothing.
No.
Yeah. So, but in
My,
terms,
the only thing what I could say is that I attended just in July a meeting in Warsaw, and there was an officer from the Armed Forces of Poland who is doing his job, and he brought a very interesting picture. That means he showed himself as a twin. He brought a picture where he was double, and he said, that's I am as an officer of the armed forces, and that's I am as an officer of the as a cultural property protection officer. And this was a very good symbol, because usually it should be one person. So, and I asked him about regulations, if there exist ones for the elite forces, and he said he's not allowed to say, or he can't say anything about that.
why is that?
It was an answer.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I know from the Italians, and I know from the Polish people, that they do something in their what is in their competence and in their responsibility. So, but that what we think is what should be done. We should come to a coordinated international cooperation in that field. This is also what we want to do. We have the idea to create, together with UNESCO and maybe with the Red Cross, and we are on a good way there, to maybe that we are able to create an international center in Vienna for cultural property protection in the National Defense Academy. There are a number of people who are ready, and the Swiss government people promised us to contribute to such an institute or an organization, and we hope that we will be successful in that. and we are in good contact with our neighbors, with Norway, with Slovenia, and there are a number of people also in the armed forces as well as in the civil ministries, where we think that we could come to a good solution and to form a nucleus where we can start and spread then, because we are looking strongly for partners which can, which we can discuss the problems. What is, for example, what should be under, what do we understand under enhanced protection, for example? Because this is something what should be done in the next future, according to the second protocol. And I also hope then when now I think 22 or 23 or 24 states have signed the second protocol, so that it can be set in force, or it is already set in force, and there will be created a new committee, and maybe this will be more effective than the regime which was just up to now with the second, with the Hague Convention.
And I know you've said this before, but just repeat one more time what summarize the second
Yeah.
protocol. Just
The main issues of the second protocol, I would say, are the more detailed and general provisions regarding protection, even precautionary measures for safeguarding, and a very important chapter is the chapter 3 with the enhanced protection, because the old regime of the special protection was not very effectful, I would say. So we had only 6 objects worldwide. That means 3 in the Netherlands, the Vatican City in Rome, and the shelter in Germany, in which the more or less the German archives, the microfishes are restored. And we had this shelter in Austria, but Austria cancelled it recently by geological reasons. This is a salt mine, and we had water in there, and we never will renew it, because we think that other forms of protection will be more changed from a horizontal safeguarding to a vertical. That means we think that the time is too short to bring objects from one place to another one, and to manage that. And so we think it will be better to build shelters directly under the house or the area where the object normally is situated. And the most important chapter of the second protocol, I think, is the chapter 4, criminal responsibility and jurisdiction, because for the first time it deals with the fact that if offenses happened are committed, then responsibility is given, and the people could be brought to maybe an international court, or to this is more the responsibility is more taken from national jurisdiction and given more to an international level, and I think this will be more effective in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even that people could be set to prison in each country which has signed the convention, and brought to court also but the possibilities of let me say, can we stop that?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm looking for The prosecution is much better than it was before, I would say. So,
People would actually go to jail, or
yeah, yes, but it is now this is a question of developing this, let's say, this part of law in the future, and this is mainly a question of international cooperation and international development of jurisdiction. But
before
for the first time, this Serbian admiral was brought guilty in The Hague for the attacking of Dubrovnik. So this was the first time that a person was jailed for sent guilty in a court concerning offences against